Welcome to ZEV Technologies. Today we're going to show you how to install a brand new ZEV trigger into a factory GLOCK frame. Before we begin, you should please note these modifications should only be done by a trained professional gunsmith, and they are intended to make your firearm safe and reliable. As always, when dealing with any firearm at all times, maintain the utmost respect and safety of your firearm and follow these guidelines. To help you with the process, you will need a pair of safety glasses, an armor's block, and a GLOCK punch tool, or 332 punch strong enough to get the pins through, especially on a brand new frame, and you'll see why later in this video. And if you don't have any of these items, check out our troubleshooting video where we show you tips and tricks on the same process. Today we will be installing the new ZEV CFT Pro Trigger. However, this will also work with additional kits, so if need be, you can pause your screen and check out the color coding system we have in place to identify which trigger you may need. Each trigger comes with various parts and accessories, but today we are going to show you the main trigger unit only, so it'll be a very simple process. You'll want to begin every process by making certain that the firearm is unloaded and clear. First, by locking the slide to the rear, keeping it pointed in a safe direction, and then checking that there is no magazine and no ammunition in the barrel. Safety is always the most important. Once you're certain that it is unloaded and clear, you can release the slide and then pull the trigger. Once again, pointed in a safe direction. Next, you will remove the slide from the frame by pulling it back a 1/4 inch with your right hand and pulling down on both sides of the slide lock lever with your left hand. We'll cover this technique more in depth in the troubleshooting video as well. Once you remove the slide, you can take the armor's block and get it centered and use your punch tool and begin removing the pins, starting with the locking block pin or the topmost pin, applying downward pressure, pushing it through the frame. As mentioned, on a new frame it will be a much tighter fit, so you'll need that stronger punch tool to do the trick. Next, you'll remove the trigger pin. You may need to wiggle the slide release to push the pin through, as sometimes they get caught. And finally, the ejector housing pin on the back of the frame. Remove the slide and release and set aside, and then use the punch tool to remove the locking block. It should just slide straight out of the frame. Once the locking block is removed, you can set that aside and the entire trigger unit should just slide right out of the frame. It's best to grab it by the rear trigger housing because you can get your finger underneath and lift the whole unit straight up. Once you've removed the factory trigger and read over the literature of your new ZEV trigger, you'll begin the reassembly order. So take a moment to arrange your parts as shown and follow the process from top to bottom. Take your new ZEV trigger unit, line it up at the rear and front spaces, and fully press it into the frame. It should just seat right in like it was designed to do. Once that is in, follow it with the locking block, installing it so that it makes a U shape facing forward. This is an important step most people make mistakes on because they often put the pins in first. Then you'll insert the first of the pins, which is the locking block or the topmost pin in the right side of the frame. You can identify this pin by its two larger ends. Use downward pressure on the block to help install in tighter frames, using your tool to make sure you seat the pin properly. Next, take the slide release and install it alongside the trigger, making sure the spring is under the locking block pin. This is another important step, and we'll go over what happens when the spring is not under the pin in the troubleshooting video as well. Take the trigger pin and put it in on the right-hand side. You can identify this pin by size. Insert it until it stops. Then, using the block and punch tool, lightly press down and swirl the slide release into place so the pin can go through. Remember to seat the pin fully in the frame. Finish the pin installation with the ejector housing pin. This is the only plastic pin in the group, so it should slide in fairly smooth. Again, use the punch tool to seat it fully. Finally, you'll reassemble the slide with the frame by lining up the grooves on both. And what you're testing for is to make sure your slide does not get locked back, as well as dry fire functionality. You'll want to test for reset, trigger break, or any trigger issues, making sure you have a safe and reliable firearm. When installed properly, you should have a smooth trigger pull and slide transition, and you're all set with your new ZEV trigger. In the next video, we'll go over troubleshooting as well as tips and tricks. If you have any questions about our products, call our customer service number provided in the information section of this video. And for your next upgrades and install processes, keep it here at ZEV Technologies.